Fani Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County, has been removed from the Trump case that was brought in Georgia. And that was brought against, I think, 30 additional individuals. There might have been 16 remaining by the time this got to the Georgia Appeals Court because other people made plea deals or were taken out. They were not prosecuted. But it is not just Fani Willis who is removed. It is her entire office. So anyone involved with the Fulton County DA office is taken off this case, and it goes to a Georgia prosecuting attorney's council that can decide to dismiss this, which they did 2 years ago in a similar case that she was booted from and got her whole office booted from because she was doing fundraisers for someone who was an opponent of someone they were launching an investigation against. But I want to go right now to Jay Secular, our chief counsel, my dad. Dad, right away, this is doesn't happen often, but so it is a big decision for President Trump and everybody who was brought up on these criminal charges from this grand jury and the work that was done by DA Willis's office.
Well, Jordan, you're right. And the victory here is huge because the Court of Appeals correctly not only took her off the case, but also her entire office. So as you said, it goes to the District Attorney's Council. I do not see any way in which they bring a charge based on the same charges she brought in the RICO case from a new DA. I just don't see it. Now, another thing that's important in the opinion, and I think this goes to the heart of what we argued in the case, was that, remember, the trial court judge said there was an odor of mendacity surrounding this, but he didn't think it rose to the level of disqualification. Obviously, the Georgia Court of Appeals, and that's what we wrote in our brief, thought it was enough for disqualification. The disqualification here is also significant because it goes back to the pre-indictment investigation. In other words, what the Georgia Court of Appeals is saying is her office should not have been involved even in the pre-indictment issues. So it puts into question the entire process. But I think the good news for the president-elect, as well as the incoming team, it takes this case off the plate. And there's no way that anything is going to happen anyway, but this certainly doesn't. And for the other defendants, this is really good news. There were some really good friends of mine that were in this, including a very well-known trial lawyer in Georgia. In fact, I was talking with him this morning. He called and would texted rather, and he was brought up in this, which was ridiculous. He's one of the most respected trial lawyers in the state, and of course he's a supporter of the ACLJ, I should add, and he's out of it now as well. So I think this is nothing but a resounding victory and a great job.
I know that people, obviously they're focusing on President Trump, but I think you rightfully brought up that there were a lot of other people here. I mean, I think at one time there were 30. I think it got down to like somewhere under 20, but because of plea deals and things like that. I mean, here, is there any way for those individuals, once this is finalized by that council, if they decide to not bring any charges, do you think they have to appoint somebody to deal with the ramifications of this because of people who might have paid financial penalties and other made other deals?
Because of the way the opinion is written, where they have that specific discussion in the opinion about activity pre-trial. Right. So they're talking about the indictment process, the investigation process. I think that when the DA council looks at this and decides not to proceed, if I was representing one of these defendants, I would go in and try to get those pleas now removed.
Right. I mean, because you're talking about constitutional rights being violated
in the first place. Right.
Right. These are and what we've talked about is it's usually difficult to sue the government, even state governments, for financial penalties.
Right.
But if you violate constitutional rights, there is a provision where they usually waive that. And in this kind of case, where people's lives have been, almost ruined or at least put on hold for years, while this has been going through the process, even though it looked absurd from the outside when we found out all this information, that those individuals too can see some justice in this. I mean, that President Trump, obviously, this is not going anywhere. Like you said, I can't imagine any other
No.
DA's office, they would have to start over. There's no way to just clean this up and just clean, because as you said, it goes back to pre-indictment. So, I mean, you'd have to start at point one, and I'm not even sure if you can do that without violating the court's order. It's interesting, the dissent in this case, too, was 2-1, but I want to make sure that the audience knows, the dissent just said, we shouldn't have to be the court doing this. The trial court should have done this on their own. The trial court should have done it. So that was just a disagreement over which court should be the one that issues that decision. They did not disagree that she should be removed. So I mean, there was pretty much it was unanimous to that idea that this DA's office, again, the entire office needed to be removed. And of course, I think it's a huge victory for President Trump. And what a turnaround we've seen in just the last few months of these cases, whether it's Jack Smith in the federal side or in you see it now in Georgia, and we await what will finally happen in some of these New York cases.
No, you're right. I mean, the scope and nature and breadth and the movement in the cases against the president as they collapse totally. I mean, the only thing that's really left is New York at this point, and that whole case is ridiculous. And I think that Judge Merchan and his order the other day is going to get reversed by the appellate division of the courts there, if not the Court of Appeals will. So I think, look, for the president, this is very good. For the other defendants, this is very good. The case never should have been brought. This was a RICO case, which is absurd. Think about that. Racketeering, influence, and corrupt organizations. And this whole idea of the prosecution here was ridiculous. It was far-fetched, and now she is rightly thrown off the case, as is her entire office.
When you look at this decision from the court, and then I know when we read the comments that we've seen for years, because of the amount of lawfare that we've seen in this country over the past 8 years, I'd even argue, between the deep state and the Biden administration and those around the country that just want to target conservatives. You read this decision, and it gives you hope, but it also points out why we at the ACLJ have to keep fighting every day. You know more than anyone that the wheels of justice sometimes take a long time to get to the good outcomes. But should this be giving our audience hope that when the ACLJ fights and when those of us that fight for the rule of law, that justice will be served?
Well, let me just bring everybody a quick rewind. Remember, all of this was going on at the same time we were at the Supreme Court of the United States representing the Colorado GOP as they were trying to get President Trump taken off the ballot. And the trial court, remember, in that case, ruled one way, and then their Supreme Court ruled another, and then we went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and of course we won 9-0. I think that was the beginning, by the way, of the end. That was the beginning of the end of these cases. The theories were so outrageous that you had liberal members of the court agreeing with the conservatives that you can't do this. And I think this bodes well. But it does mean we have to fight. And your support of the ACLJ, especially in these next 11 days here, are critical. This is our most important 11 days of the year financially for the American Center for Law and Justice. And your support in this faith and freedom drive will be really appreciated.